Here in the United States, the controversial topic of the unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAPs, UFOs, spaceships, spacecraft, humdinger, wide-winger, flying saucer, boomerang, or disc, largely came into focus soon after the notorious 1947 crash of an alien ship in Roswell, New Mexico. It's been the single most talked about extraterrestrial encounter for over the past 75 years, and that must be because it was the first one, right? Wrong. Coral Lorenzen is one woman who gladly testified to that. Molly Briggs from Paranormality Magazine brings us the story. Coral E. Lorenzen and her husband Jim founded the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization in 1952 after her passion for the unknown led her to discover that there was more to the UFO mystery than meets the eye. Her strange journey started one summer day in the small town of Barron, Wisconsin in 1934. When Coral was just 9 years old, she and two of her playmates had encountered a UFO, watching it lazily drift along the horizon. Strangely enough, the summer Coral had her first of many UFO encounters would turn out to be the hottest summer in climatological history. During the spring and summer of 1934, the United States was experiencing severe dust storms and record-breaking drought. Temperatures were climbing to an alarming twice as great as the previous warmest temperatures on record, causing the country to feel like it was in an international disaster, according to the American Meteorological Society. Could the devastating spike in temperatures be the reason for the 1934 interplanetary visit? Were our galactic brothers and sisters monitoring our questionable treatment of planet Earth? Coral and her friends were playing outside when she looked up and spotted something strange in the west-southwest sky. She described it as an open umbrella without ribs or spurs. Referring to the object as a thing, Coral witnessed the strange floating craft wobble west, making no sound. She recalled that the sky was clear with no clouds. So what was the strange, glowing object? The town of Barron, Wisconsin was small with a population of 1,500. Aircraft were rarely seen in the area, and the townspeople had never encountered a weather balloon. Locals would occasionally spot a small monoplane, gleefully looking on as the rare sighting would elicit pleasure, not panic, given the town was small and not stupid. A monoplane was likely not what the kids had seen on that sweltering summer day, though. Coral and her two friends stood in the sticky summer heat, gazing up into the sky. As sweat began to drip down the sides of their faces, one of the youngsters cleverly surmised that the object might be a parachute. The slightly cleverer Coral replied that there were no ropes or lines suspended from it, deeming the child's guess unlikely. The glowing white object was the size of a dime held at arm's length and bounced around in a strange motion. The three unattended children noticed the thing was moving relatively slowly, one of the witnesses declaring that it was undulating, poking along at a leisurely rate of speed with a rather strange motion. The children stood waiting for the object for what they described as 20 or so seconds. The strange craft bobbed its way toward the horizon and disappeared. This detail, however, is speculative. Coral stated that because of her unfortunate vantage point, she and her playmates could not determine if the unidentified object continued to sail over the horizon or land near what the locals called the Upper Dam. Relative to the amount of time Coral and her friends were in sight of the flying object, there is no way to determine for sure just how long the encounter may have lasted. There have been many accounts of one or more witnesses spotting a UFO in the sky, and after what they believed to be mere seconds, they realize a significant amount of time had passed. The internationally known 1961 alien abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in northern New Hampshire is a prime example of such an encounter. One autumn night headed south through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, Betty and Barney Hill were traveling home from their honeymoon. Betty had been tracking a strange light in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the pair found themselves many miles down the highway, almost home, with 2 hours of missing time. The couple had no recollection of how they had gotten there. Betty and Barney did not speak with each other about the incident immediately. This turns out to be a common occurrence after a multiple-witness UFO encounter. Then the nightmares began. It was the sleepless nights, along with Betty noticing her dress had been torn, that the couple started their journey looking for answers. Betty had also noticed an unexplainable pinkish stain on her dress. Multiple sessions of hypnotherapy finally brought the Hills' encounter with the extraterrestrials to light. The Hills' experience is marked by history as the first ever widely publicized alien abduction account. Not a bad 15 minutes of fame for a mailman and a social worker, although they may beg to differ. Betty claimed to have been visited multiple times before her death. After the three children watched the UFO disappear out of sight during their encounter in Barron, Wisconsin, the group hurried home. It is unclear if all of the children shared their curious UFO encounter with their parents. Coral, however, could not wait to share the news. The excited 9-year-old ran home and told her father exactly what had happened. Coral's father was open to hearing her strange tale, so much so that he immediately began to make inquiries in town as to whether or not there were any other witnesses. Let me take a minute here and shed some light on the fact that entertaining his daughter's fanciful flying thing story was an impressive move on Dad's part. Remember, this was the year 1934, the year of Nazism, political extremism, and the year that saw so many struggling farmers in the U.S. it forced Congress to pass the Farm Relief Act. It was also the year of Bonnie and Clyde and the year the Loch Ness Monster was seen for the first time. At a time in our culture where life and death were literally at stake and kids were instructed to be seen and not heard, no one would blame the dismissal of such nonsense. But Coral's father handled his daughter's curiosity like a champ. Sadly, Dad's inquiry came up flat. No one else in town, other than the three playmates, had seen the curious craft. Also, no parachute was found in the area, allowing Coral to strike at least one possibility off the list of possible suspects. The budding UFO investigator never did receive any definitive answers to her peculiar encounter on that sweltering summer day. Still, she did go on to have many more sightings that inspired Coral to help others in their quest for answers concerning this strange phenomenon. A few months after Coral and her husband Jim created APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, the woman had another bizarre encounter. May 21, 1952, as she was walking along the corner of 3rd and Michigan in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, Coral heard a scream from down the street, citing, "There's the flying saucer lady! Ask her what it is!" Coral turned and ran toward the commotion, finally catching a sight of a silver ellipsoid object. Witnesses declared the object metallic, with a bright red glow on the bottom. The 780-foot object moved slowly toward the northeast and was visible for 50 minutes. The massive glowing craft was said to have been at an altitude of only 40 feet. In the aftermath, General Mills Company, a cereal company, attempted to claim responsibility for the craft, stating that it had launched a balloon earlier that morning to study the atmosphere. "I don't think so," said Coral. "It does not explain the bright light at the bottom of the object." She further rebuffed the cereal giant's claim by stating, "Balloons are considerably less than 400 feet in diameter and are not equipped with huge riding lights." Interestingly, General Mills was also involved in the melee of a 1947 Minnesota UFO sighting. Citizens jammed the phone lines for an hour with reports of seeing something glowing and angry red. The Wheaties peddlers also took credit for this mass sighting, saying eventually that they were secretly working on an unmanned Project Skyhook. The company stated they were working with our government, developing balloons that would have the capability to carry 250 pounds straight up into the atmosphere. Just a side note, the General Mills Company's aeronautical division launched every Skyhook balloon before 1952. After doing so, the company eventually revealed that in developing their balloons, they had seen so many UFOs they were no longer amused by them. That once 9-year-old sky-gazing babe didn't let anything get in her way as she continued to dig deep for answers. Coral found herself eventually writing for the Green Bay Press-Gazette and creating the infamous APRO, opening many state chapters. APRO remained active for over 28 years until Coral's death in 1988. Sadly, Coral's life was not without ill fortune. Not only did she die young at just 63 years old, but she also fell, breaking her neck in 1979. Coral watched her husband die at 64 years old and witnessed the death of her daughter just months before her own passing. I feel another story brewing. Coral devoted her life to investigating some of the world's most intriguing UFO cases and will be remembered as one of the frontrunners in the ever-controversial and fascinating world of ufology. Want more paranormality? Subscribe to Paranormality Magazine, and each month get it delivered digitally or via mail in our print version. Paranormality Magazine is a collaborative endeavor featuring works from people like you who have a passion for all things mysterious and unexplained. Our goal is the pursuit of knowledge, gathering captivating stories from our own team of writers, researchers, and investigators, as well as from writers such as yourself. Each monthly issue also includes a list of paranormal, horror, UFO, and cryptozoology events around the country, incredible paranormal-themed artwork, articles and writing sent in from our readers, suggested books and podcasts to consume, and more. Visit ParanormalityMag.com and subscribe today for as little as $3.99 a month. That's ParanormalityMag.com. ParanormalityMag.com.